Focus on why you're doing things, not the technology.
You're listening to Smart Thinking, a podcast from WSP. I'm Matthew Marston, taking you on a journey into smart buildings. In this podcast, we're talking about the appification of everything. Joining me on live link from Melbourne is Henry Okraglik, who's WSP's Global Director of Digital Services. He manages a global team of around 70 software engineers and analysts from all areas of software development, including mechatronics, mobile device software development, web development, systems integration, and Internet of Things design and implementations. Henry has founded several software development companies in the USA and Australia and is well regarded as a software commercialization expert and has worked in an advisory capacity with capital venture firms in Australia. Welcome, Henry, and first question for you. What is a smart building and why should we care?
Okay, so if you look at the way we've traditionally dealt with buildings, we've tended to separate out the different disciplines and technologies within the buildings. The thing that's really changed things is the availability of low-cost sensors that are becoming very, very powerful. And therefore, it now is possible to make a building much, much smarter by it enabling us to interrogate all aspects of that building to improve the human interaction and experience and productivity within that building.
Got you. So when we're talking about mobile apps, how do they differ from normal applications?
Okay, so most of us will be familiar with using our smartphones for using social media or for looking up train timetables or whatever it might be. And I think what we're able to do now is use our smartphones and applications on our smartphones to interact with buildings. So for instance, finding your way to someone's office, or in the days now where with flexible working, finding out where someone is sitting, can all be facilitated through wayfinding on your mobile phone. And we can take it a little bit further and even have it so that your personal preferences for lighting, heating and cooling can actually be controlled off your mobile phone through an application. So we're really making buildings more personalised to the desires and experiences that people have when they're occupying those buildings.
And do you think that it's mobility that's really adding the convenience?
I think it's a combination of the mobility and the underlying technology that makes buildings smart. And it's that interaction between those two different technologies, the one you carry in your pocket, in your smartphone, and the technology that underpins the infrastructure in the building and our ability to have those interactions.
When I'm out and about, I'm seeing increasingly that more places have workplace apps. Why do you think they're becoming so popular?
I think it's just an extension of a trend we're seeing with mobile applications in every other walk of life. I think, if you think back, we used to use mobile applications when first smartphones came out to play games. We then used them for more utility functions like finding out what time our bus or train is arriving. And now we're extending that into interacting with buildings. I think this is just a natural extension along the continuum of developing smartphone applications.
Some people think that the use of mobile applications in buildings is the wrong thing to do because it gives the kind of expectation that for the first time ever, that to use a building, you need to bring your own hardware. And that if you're looking down at your phone, you're not looking up and enjoying the building. So my question to you is, how true do you think that point of view is?
I don't think that those views are mutually exclusive. I think that you can experience a building as well as interact with it. I mean, we do this all the time in every other walk of life. I don't see that buildings are necessarily any different. I think maybe for some people, the experience of using your mobile phone to interact with the building is new, but that was true of every mobile application that existed before it as well.
Fair. When you're helping a client to design a mobile app, what kind of a process are you taking them through?
Usually it's a question of what are you trying to achieve as an outcome? And that will vary from client to client. But the typical things we see are things like wayfinding. How does a person coming into a building find quickly and easily where they want to go? And an application is a very convenient way of doing that. If you're looking at things like improving the productivity of your employees and looking at wellness and the health of your employees, then it might be more about personal comfort to do with climate and lighting, or even finding out when the next yoga class is that the company's running, or all those sort of things. So I think you've really got to start, as we always do in software, is finding out what are the requirements, and that will vary. I mean, Sometimes if you're dealing with a building owner and manager, it might be about reducing the operating costs by getting a better handle on the heating, cooling, ventilation and air conditioning system. If you're an employer, it may be about employee wellness.
Understood. What kind of issues are you seeing with your clients, if you had to name a few?
I think the couple that I was just referring to come up again and again. So building operators and managers are typically focused on the cost. And so often they want to look at things like, how do I get a better handle on how my building's performing? And they might own a portfolio of buildings, and they might be interested in how the gas, electricity and water is being used in comparison to other buildings and how they can optimize that. Often we now see building tenants wanting to make their place desirable for employees to work in, and therefore it might be more about personal comfort and being able to locate where you're working or different spaces that are available for, say, reflective thinking or for group work or somewhere private for more private type work.
Would it be fair to say that an app is the key to success on some of those use cases?
I think it is, because everybody's got a smartphone, and so it's quite convenient. And I think most people are used to referring to their smartphones whenever they need to know something. So I think the only thing that's new here is really not the use of the mobile phone and the application, but the interaction with the built environment and the building that you're occupying.
What would your top tips be for those embarking on some kind of digital integration in the built environment?
The first and most important thing is being very clear on what outcomes you're looking for and what your objectives are. Because unless you've got those clear, it becomes like a laundry list of possibilities, and that's not really very helpful. It's also very expensive kitting out a building to be smart so that you can interact with it. So you want to be very sure about why you're doing this and what you're trying to achieve, and not getting too caught up in the hype and the possibilities of what can be achieved. And so, I always encourage our clients to think very hard about, why are you doing this? And often that's a very difficult conversation, because it's much easier to say, we want to make the building smart. And that's not really very helpful if you're trying to design an application. Far better to focus on the occupants, or whether you're managing the building, are you trying to achieve cost savings, are you trying to make the workplace more productive, whatever it might be. That seems to me that the number one thing we should focus on. Everything else from there becomes much more straightforward.
A big thank you to Henry Okraglik joining us from Melbourne.
There were some challenging questions there. Thank you very much, Matt.
In our next podcast, we'll be talking about why the blockchain will be so important for the built environment with two guests. Firstly, Jonathan Jones from Blockchain Technologies Limited and John McDermott from WSP Building Services. If something in this episode has piqued your interest, then have a chat with us. Email smart@wsp.com. You've been listening to Smart Thinking, a podcast from WSP.